Welcome to Civil Justice for SA Survivors.
Hello and welcome back to Civil Justice for SA Survivors with attorneys Marc Pearlman and Melissa Anderson. Marc and Melissa represent survivors of SA and exploitation throughout Illinois. Their work goes beyond the courtroom, focusing on compassion, safety, and empowerment every step of the way. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about what it really means to take a trauma-informed approach to legal advocacy and why that makes such a difference for survivors. Marc, Melissa, great to have you back.
It's good to be here,
Kevin.
So we did touch on trauma-informed approach last episode, but I really like to unpack this more and really discuss it thoroughly. The phrase trauma-informed is used in many professions today, but it can mean different things. How do you define it in the context of your legal practice?
Yeah, so fortunately, we are hearing it more and more in lots of different areas, which is encouraging because the more that people recognize the impact that trauma has on people, the better off people will be that have experienced trauma. So it's good that it is being spoken about throughout a lot of different professions now. And it is different depending on the area that you're working in. For us, having a trauma-informed approach really means from the beginning of handling a case that we're understanding the impact that the trauma of SA may have had on not just their life outside of the legal process, but how it's going to impact how they respond throughout the process that we bring them through. So, for our practice, it really is keeping that in mind in every conversation that we have in our clients, and also to a certain extent structuring a particular case or a particular our process, structuring it differently for different people. So, some clients require a lot more hands-on approach. And we're willing to do that. We don't want to throw a bunch of questionnaires at a client and say, here, fill these out and get back to us for everybody, because that is daunting, thinking about what has happened to them. So we take the time to do that with them.
Recognizing that SA survivors, they often come with a lot of misconceptions, like somehow they had some responsibility in what happened to them, and that or that they were weak or something of that nature. And the truth of the matter is, those are misconceptions. We often tell our clients the very first time we speak with them, the reason that this happened to you and not me was that you were there and I was not. It's really as simple as that. People are always of the view that perpetrators of SA are the creepy looking uncle. Usually not the case. It's the most charismatic, articulate, polished people. That's how they get away with it.
Right.
And likewise, the survivors run the gamut from the smaller child or small adult to the biggest, the strongest people. And it really does boil down to the fact that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
And we also make it very clear to our clients initially, we apologize for what happened to them, and we let them know, and we mean this, they are heroic for coming forward, because the only way things change, the only way this horrible SA that goes on in our society, the only way it changes is to talk about it, to be aware of it. And so few people ever talk about it. So our clients are really heroic in protecting children into the future by speaking up about it.
And along the lines of what Marc said, our clients being at the wrong place at the wrong time, it's just so important when I talk to my clients to continually reinforce that, because there's a misconception, not just with people who are victims of SA, but in the general public, that, in the general public, people think, oh, it could never happen to me because I wouldn't let it.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
so it's such a misconception because it's not something you let happen to you. It's something that happens to you, just as if someone were to hit you with your car. I mean, just the way humans react to things. There's a reason people talk about fight or flight. Um, and freeze, which is really what most of our clients explain happened to them. And that's a natural, normal response when somebody you trust and somebody who's in a position of authority takes advantage of you. So the fact that our clients say, I just froze, I didn't do anything. Well, that's human nature. That's what people do often in these situations. And so just the misconception that somehow they hold some sort of responsibility for what happens to them. It's a huge goal of ours to not just make them intellectually understand that, but really believe it.
Yeah. So the people that everybody believes they, kick the perpetrator, punch him in the face, run, what have you. That I won't say never. It's not absolute, but that almost never happens. And as much as you think that's what you would do, what you actually do is you freeze because it's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, I think about when you've had things happen to athletes. There was one in the hockey world not that long ago, and I knew a lot of people who were like, I don't understand it. I just want to punch a guy in the face. It's like, well, you say that sitting here at the bar, but if you're in that situation, you don't know how you would react in that situation.
100%.
Exactly.
How do you guys work to maintain a safe space for your clients and to keep that process respectful from very first contact?
Initially, when we first talk to them, we make sure that we talk to them about things like, lawyers are often really controlling and want to have power over a process. And we really work very hard to not be that way with our clients because we know that's a trigger for them. Right. So we are very accessible to them. We give them our cell phone numbers the first time we speak to them. We tell them that we're available to speak to them 24/7 and that, that we trust that they'll be respectful and not call us at all hours unless it's an emergency. But it is really being accessible to them and knowing that it's okay to talk about this and that nothing you're going to tell us is going to be the first time we've heard it. We've heard it all. And you can never normalize the what happened to somebody because it's not, what happened to them is not okay and it's not normal, but they're also not the only person it's ever happened to.
In terms of trying to keep it a safe space for our clients, I think it's so important to really listen to your clients, actively listen, and get to know them, because for them to feel safe, you have to have an understanding of what makes them feel safe. Not all of our clients have the same needs in this process. And so just by listening to them and understanding what their particular needs are, that's how I feel like I make my clients safe by getting to know them a bit and know what it is how they need me to respond to certain things.
That's a great point, because understanding is not everyone communicates the same way. Not everyone reacts the same way. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Do you guys collaborate with other trauma-informed attorneys? Do you work with therapists and other professionals during a case?
We do. And we work with survivor groups. We work with therapists. We work with in terms of other attorneys, unfortunately, I don't know that there are very many that I perceive as being trauma informed. And I think that's a problem. I think if you're not trauma informed, you really can't provide a valuable process or a valuable service for the clients. It really is the most important part of our practice. We've recovered a lot of money on behalf of our clients, but what really makes Melissa and myself get out of bed every day is knowing that at the end of the process, they're in a better place. And that, we've had so many clients call us and tell us, I am a different person today. My life has changed dramatically. And I'll take that over $10 million every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
In with working with other attorneys in terms of being trauma informed, well, I think you can almost immediately tell when someone's not handling something like how we wish that they would. Particularly we're up against a lot of attorneys, but I think you can also tell immediately when some people are. And because of our client, because of all of the people who've come forward about their SA, there are this issue is being dealt with a lot more, and a lot more people in this space are becoming educated because they have to be. So just
Right.
over time, you can see the progression of understanding sometimes with people that you deal with. So it's certainly obvious from the outset when somebody that you're dealing with, whether or not they're approaching this in the way that they should. And fortunately, there are some attorneys out there, and it makes such a big difference when that's who you're dealing with, especially when you're opposing on a case. There's a way to do that and advocate for your client, but do it also in a trauma informed way, which is unfortunately we don't see it all that often, but we're starting to see it, and I think that's in large part to all of the people who've come for all of the survivors of SA that have come forward.
Absolutely.
Because without them, these cases wouldn't exist, So it's definitely changing the landscape in terms of how people deal with SA. And then also with dealing with therapists, it's interesting because so many of our clients immediately say, we bring up therapy for them because we're big proponents of therapy. Somebody who's been through this, therapy is helpful. Usually, obviously it's not a one size fits all, but we see so often when somebody is with a therapist that's right for them, what a difference it can make. And, when we bring that up, so many of our clients immediately say, well, is that going to make my case better? And we make very clear, this has nothing to do with your case. This is to do with making you feel like you're healing in this process and actually healing in this process. So we've also consulted with therapists in terms of how we can continually make our process more trauma informed.
Yeah, the legal profession, particularly on the criminal side, well, I won't limit it to lawyers. Unfortunately, law enforcement and state's attorneys, district attorneys, they're not trauma informed often. So you can appreciate or imagine that if you're reporting an SA, and the first thing that's said to you is, well, were there any witnesses? No. Okay. Well, the perpetrator is going to say they didn't do it. Then it's your word against his or her word. And you're going to have to face, if this goes to trial, you're going to have to face your perpetrator in court. Well, those are that's such an uninformed, poor way to approach a victim of somebody that just went through perhaps the most traumatic thing in their life, right? You're scaring them and making them not want to come forward, which is what they're inclined to do in the first place. Mm-hmm. So, in addition to civil lawyers, I hope that that law enforcement and criminal lawyers also become much more trauma informed so that it encourages people to come forward.
The civil process can be long, it can be stressful. How do you balance the the realities of that for your clients? How do you help survivors maintain that sense of control and trust throughout what could be a long process?
Yeah, it's interesting. Our process could be anywhere typically from about a year to 3 years, depending on the jurisdiction. If we're in court, could be even a little bit longer. But our typical case gets resolved in between, I'm going to say 12 and 24 months. Mm-hmm. And that time frame is actually really, really helpful in terms of their healing, because this isn't, we often say that if we could settle a case in 2 weeks, I don't know that we would, because our client would not be any better at the end of 2 weeks. Is all they would have is they'd think that, perhaps they would get a monetary recovery for what happened to them. But in the scheme of things, that could be worse, right? Like, oh, now I've got paid some money for this, but I still feel the same way,
right?
Which isn't good. So, the process and the healing that you get throughout the process is huge. So the time frame of 12, 24 months, while it's a long time, it's really, our client could use that time to understand and heal and do the work that they need to do to heal over that time period.
For people who are listening who might have had a negative experience with the legal system in the past, what would you say to them about how a trauma-informed lawyer approaches things differently and in a better way?
Yeah, it's so important, because this is often the most difficult thing our clients are faced with in dealing with it. So especially if they're coming in with a background of having not had a good experience, I think it's just from the beginning, hearing about that and asking them what it was about that was so particularly hard for them, and trying to take whatever that is, that piece of things out of it. A lot of times, just the nature of the legal system, you're dealing with people in positions of authority. So you're dealing with a judge. You're being questioned oftentimes by the opposing side. And then even your own lawyer sometimes can appear to be in some sort of authority position to you, because they're the ones with the information and they're the ones with the power to try to do something for you. So I think just being cognizant of that from the outset, that these clients, anyone who's experienced SA has usually done it, oftentimes, more often than not, it's somebody in a position of authority that's done this to them. So recognizing that dynamic and recognizing that's often a trigger for them. So just the legal system in general is often not, even for people who haven't experienced trauma, but certainly for people who've experienced trauma at the hands of somebody in an authority position, just recognizing throughout that the legal process can be difficult for them. And so listening to them to hear what it was in their past experiences in the legal system that was particularly difficult for them.
And I say this not in a clinical sense, but in an everyday sense. We have really designed our process to be therapeutic for our clients as much as possible, right? There are certain aspects of it that, that are legal by nature because it's a legal claim. But our process is really designed to be therapeutic. Again, we're not clinically licensed or anything, but because we are trauma informed, we were able to create an environment that feels safe and that is hopefully therapeutic.
And also something that people don't talk about too much is, aside from the way we handle it, a case and doing it in the best way that we can from a trauma perspective, that people who are considering picking up the phone and calling someone, I do think it's important that the person who's taking that call has some understanding around this space. Right. But also just making the call and telling somebody for the first time what happened to them in itself is something that is healing.
Yeah.
There's studies that show that just saying it out loud and telling one person physically has a physical impact on people's health. So
Makes sense.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
Acknowledging it, just
Yeah.
acknowledging it has an impact, a positive impact on their physical and mental health.
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
anyone who's, even if they're not necessarily thinking of jumping right into the legal process, that's something for survivors of SA to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And we tell them that, Kevin, we tell them we can do this. Often in the law, there's deadlines and things of that nature. But if there aren't, we tell our clients, we could do this at your pace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys both for that. That's it for today's episode of Civil Justice for SA Survivors with Marc Pearlman and Melissa Anderson. If you'd like to learn more or speak confidentially with their team, visit pearlmananderson.com for resources as well as contact information. Thanks for listening. Please share this with anybody who you think can benefit from it, and subscribe to our channel. We've got a lot of great information coming your way. Marc, Melissa, it's always great chatting with you guys. Thanks so much for all your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Kevin.
you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.